Hello everyone, welcome back to Apto channel. In today's video, we will get to know the details about how to make the asynchronous service invocations from your microservice. So how the asynchronous service invocations will be done by using these two annotations, enable async and the async. Okay, we will start with what is the difference between the synchronous invocation and the asynchronous invocation. What is the benefit we are going to get if we go for the asynchronous invocation? In what scenarios we have to go for the asynchronous invocations? Okay, that is the point which we are going to discuss in today's video. So let me start with this example where my application is having couple of menus on the top, okay, like dashboard, profile, address, and payments. When I call the profile, when I click on the profile tab here, right, the profile details will be displayed like name, email, account status, because it is getting the details, it is invoking this particular service customer, and we are passing only the customer ID to this microservice, and it is connecting to the database or the microservice, another microservice, and it is getting the details. So the moment I click on the address tab, address related service will be invoked by passing the same customer ID again, and address details will be shown in the screen. The moment I click on payments, payment related microservice, again by using the customer ID, will be invoked to show the what all payments that are done by the particular customer ID. So profile is showing, is invoking profile related microservice, and it is getting the profile details. Address is invoking address related, and it is getting only the address details. Payments is invoking payment microservice, and it is getting all the payments done by that customer. Okay, so all these are the three different services are being invoked from the three different pages or the tabs of your client application. But in my client application, there is another page, that is dashboard. Okay, when user lands in after login, right? So it is showing all the details like profile like this, address details like this, and the payments, what all payments done by the customer. It is showing all the details, profile, address, and payments in one single page. So for that, what we have to do is either we have to call all the three different services like profile microservice, address microservice, and the payment microservice individually, one after the other. Okay, then we can display all the details that are written from all the services to this page. Alternatively, what we can do is we can create a microservice, customer dashboard, customer ID, that accepts the customer ID. That in turn invokes all these three microservices and gives the consolidated response back to client application. So while it is invoking uh, the individual microservices like profile, address, payments, individual microservices, right? If you see that in all those microservices, customer ID is the only parameter. Okay, so customer ID is the only parameter in all these microservices, and also if you look at that, one service is not dependent on the response of the another service. Like for address, we just need the customer ID. We are not relying on the response of any other the profile service. Similarly, for payments, also we just need only the customer ID. It is not relying on the any response that is coming from the address microservice. So customer ID is a parameter that is common to all these microservices, and also each of these microservices can run independently because they are not dependent on another service, right? So each of these microservices can run independently. So when in such scenarios, when each of the microservices or each of the services you are invoking as part of a particular service, like this customer dashboard, it has to invoke all these services, profile, address, payments, right? So when in these scenarios where you are having independent services, then you can go for the asynchronous invocation of those services. If you do the synchronous invocation of these services, what will happen? We will see with an example starting with the synchronous invocation. Then we will convert that with the asynchronous communication. Okay. So if you do the synchronous communication, right? If the moment the customer dashboard receives a request, it invokes the profile microservice and it waits for the response from profile. Once it has received the response from profile, then only it makes the call to address. Once it receives the response from address, then it makes a call to payments. Once it receives the response from payment, then it consolidates all the services response and gives it back to the client for the dashboard service. Okay, that is all the synchronous communication. But in the moment you switch the service invocation of profile address payments from dashboard service from sync to async, then what will happen? All the services will be triggered first. They don't, I mean, the dashboard service will not wait for the response from these services to invoke the other service. Okay, all these three services will be triggered at a particular time. Okay, once the response is received, all the responses will be clubbed and given to the client. So the wait time to get the response for each and every microservice will be reduced if we go for the asynchronous communication. Okay, we don't have to wait for the second service invocation till we get the response for the first service. Okay, so that's all about the theory that is behind the asynchronous communication and when to go for the asynchronous communication. What is the difference between synchronous and asynchronous invocations? Okay, now as I mentioned, all these services, right? These are giving the separate details to me, profile details, address details, and payments details. So this service I already developed it. Okay, so this is the service. Okay, I developed it as customer controller. If I'm passing customer slash customer id, then it gives me the profile details. If I'm passing customer slash address slash customer id, then it gives me the address details. If I pass payment slash customer id, then it gives me the payment details. What it is doing internally, it is connecting to the database. Okay, yep. This is I mean it is the we are calling the repository from here. Hmm? And from there on it is connecting to the database and getting the details, profile details and the address details. And for this one I have a table. I have the tables created already. I'll show the database tables as well. Yeah, this is my MySQL workbench. So these are the tables I created in my Java database. For customer profile, I have the customer table. All the three rows are there with the ID 1 to 3. And customer address table, I have the address for each and every customer. I'm maintaining for simplicity only one address for one customer. But payments can be multiple, right? For two payments, I'm maintaining for each customer. Okay. So all these three tables are being referred by my entity classes. Like customer, I have created the customer entity with ID. Okay, customer address I have created, customer payments I have created. After that, these all are the just entity classes. Okay, so these entities are being referred in my repositories. Okay, I have created another package, customer repository. customer repository is referring to this entity. So whatever operations I do, that will be going to that table. Customer payments repository, this is referring to customer payments entity. Address repository referring to customer address entity. Okay, now these repositories I'm calling from my service layer. Okay, like this. So find by customer ID. If you open the repositories, these are the custom methods, right? Generally, repository implementation will be provided. The methods will be provided like find by ID, find by all ID, like that. The methods will be provided. But my unique attribute or the primary key attribute in those tables is the customer ID. Based on the customer ID, I want to get the details, right? So I have written a method in that interface. Again, the implementation will again be provided by the GPA repository itself. Okay, so these services, these repositories are used in this service layer, and the service layer is used in the business layer. Business layer is being invoked from the controller. Okay, so if I invoke this one, right, customer slash one, this is giving me the customer profile database table entries. Customer slash address slash one, address, customer address details it is giving me. And if I invoke payments, then it is giving me the payments. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to develop another microservice that is going to invoke all these three microservices in two ways. We will see what will be the behavior with synchronous invocation, and also on top of it we will apply the annotations, enable async and async annotations to make it to make the invocations as asynchronous operations. Okay, let me create a project now. Asynchronous async configuration. Okay, this is my project, and here I need only the web dependency, and also I need the dependency for components too, because this microservice I have to call the other microservice, right? So let me close all. This is my async configuration microservice. So let me go first to the application.properties. Okay, because I'm going to make three microservice calls from this microservice, right? So I'll mention the URLs of those microservice calls like this: service.customer.profile.url. This is the profile details service URL, which is accepting only the customer slash customer ID, localhost colon, and that is running on 8080 customer slash customer ID. Okay, this will be the URI param or the path param, customer ID. Similarly, I will mention service.customer.address.url. The URL is localhost 8080 customer slash address slash customer ID. Similarly, I'll have to have a payment URL as well, right? Payments. Okay. Uh, Again, I want to mention the connection timeout and the read timeout values as well. So service dot customer dot connection hyphen request hyphen timeout 6000. I'll modify them. This is connection timeout, and this is read timeout. Okay, so that's all. So I want to invoke these services from this microservice, right? So what I'll do is I'll create a client class first. Okay, client that invokes these services. Okay, I'll mention it as customer yes, customer dashboard client. Okay, because this is a dashboard microservice, right? I'm mentioning it as customer dashboard client, and I'll put it in a package app.client. Okay, now I have to invoke three service calls, right? So I'll write three methods, each one to get the data to invoke the services. Okay, now let me start with invoking the profile details microservice public get customer details. Okay, this is my method name and it gets only the customer ID. Okay, so this has to invoke, I mean this has to return something as well that we will see. This has to invoke that particular microservice, right? So we have to use the REST template to invoke any service by using HTTP client, right? So what we will do is, in the earlier example what we have done some configuration of the REST template, right? We will copy that. Where is that? This one, REST template configurations we have done, right? By using the configuration on bean. Yeah, I'll copy this one from there to here, but I'll put it in the config. Okay, com.appdev.app.config. Okay, REST template config I have. So I'll use, I'll just make the auto wiring in the client class. REST template at auto wire. Okay, we also need the HTTP headers, right? HTTP headers. That also we have created in the configuration class REST template config. Okay, so get customer details will actually return customer profile response. Okay, I have to create this class now. So in order to create this class, what I'll do is I'll copy the class from my customer microservice. This is the customer microservice, right? So here I'm having response viewers. Yep. What I'll do is I'll copy customer profile response viewer from here and put it here. Instead of this, I'll create another package here. Okay, I have to create a package com.appdev.app.controller.response viewer. I'll mention it like this. Okay. Now this is having customer profile response viewer. Again, this is dependent on the customer, right? So what I'll do is I'll again go to entities and copy the customer from my, because I'm going to use the same entities and the same beans, right? Same response objects. That's why I'm copying from there. Okay. Instead of writing again the new classes. See here, I'm going to put them in entities. Okay. com.appdev.app.entities. This is my package and I will put it here in the customer. Okay, here I have to modify this app. Okay, this one also I have to modify. Okay, that's fine. Let me go here to the customer. Yep, this one we are just getting the data right from the async config is going to connect to the customer, so we don't need any JPA related uh, annotations. We just need only the component. That's it. Instead of customer, I have to put app. Okay. Now let me go to client. So customer profile response, I'll import it now. Now if you see REST template dot exchange. Exchange, we have to pass the URL, we have to pass the method, we have to pass the request body and the headers, and we have to pass the response type, what we are expecting. All those parameters we have to pass, right? So first URL, where is the URL? I have this URL here, right? This is the URL I have to use. So if I go back here, I'll mention it as private string profile URL. Okay, what is that profile URL? Customer profile URL. Okay, the value will be injected from the property file to this. Okay, like this, we can inject a property value from the property file to this property customer profile URL. I'm going to use it. Okay, now the headers and the entity HTTP method. This is all get method, right? The customer service, okay, is expecting it to be a get method. Next, entity we have to pass. It should be having the request body and the um, request headers. Okay, we don't need this one. Next, we have to mention what is the type we are expecting. Customer profile response dot class. That is what we are expecting from as a response. Okay, now we will create an entity as well. HTTP entity is equal to new HTTP entity. Okay, so yeah, here it accepts the request body, right? So there is no request body. We can specify it as null. Another as request headers. I'm mentioning HTTP headers so that it accepts. It sends the application JSON in the content type header in the request. Now I'll use the entity. Okay. See, if you see this, the customer profile URL is having one URI param or the path param, customer ID. But if we call like this, what is the customer ID we are getting from the client? It will not be replaced in it. So we have to substitute the value that we are getting from the client into this URL, the URI param. So in order to modify the URI params, or in order to substitute the URI params, we have to use another class like this, URI component builder, components builder, URI components builder dot from URI string. See, to this one we have to pass the actual URL. What is having the template variable or the path variable. Okay, the unsubstituted one, the raw URL. Okay, if you pass it, the builder will be created first. Then you have to use that builder dot build and expand. If you call build and expand on the URI components builder, what it will do is you have to pass some parameters to it. Okay, it will take the parameter name and the parameter value, and it is going to substitute the parameter name and the value into the URL. Okay, see, this builds your instance and replaces the URI template variables with the values from an array. Okay, so if you look at this builder.build and expand, it is expecting some object of URI variable values. So I need to pass the parameter name and the value. Okay, so I'll mention map. Okay, map of parameter name and the value is integer. Okay, URI params I'll mention. I'm just initializing a map here. So URI params dot put of the parameter name in the URL is customer ID. I want that to be replaced with whatever I get from the client. Okay, now, yep. So this URI params I have to pass here. Okay, to the build and expand, because this is what will be taken by this method, and it substitute the key and value pairs which are received from the map, and it will be substituted in the URL. Okay, once they are substituted, we have to encode the URL, and we have to convert that to the URI and convert that to the toString, and this will be my service URL, final service URL, which is having the actual customer ID received from the client. That service URL I have to pass it. Okay. Once I pass it, what I will be getting? I will be getting response entity of type customer profile response. Right. So response dot get body we have to return. If you look at the get body, it is having a customer profile response. That is the return type of this method. Right. I'm going to return it. Okay, that's all. Okay, we are done with client class now. What I'll do is I'll create a service now, service class now, dashboard customer dashboard service. In the service layer, service package, and it will be just a service. Again, earlier we have not given any annotation for the client class here, right? So let me give it here. Okay, let me go to service now. Here, what we have to do, let me go here and copy everything from here. I'll remove everything except the method signature, because I want the method signature to be same across all the layers. Okay, so get customer details. It is getting the, it has to invoke the client now, right? Customer dashboard client, customer dashboard client. I have to auto wire it, right? Okay, now customer dashboard client, I have to invoke the same method, get customer details, whatever customer ID I am getting, I have to return the response. That's it. Now what I'll do is I'll create a business layer. Okay. I'll put that in the business package. Com dot what is that? Customer dashboard business. I'll again annotate this with service. I'll copy the same thing, but here I have to call the service. Okay, instead of client, I will pass the service layer. Okay. Okay, this is all fine now. Now, what I have to do, I have to create a controller to get the request from the dashboard page, right? Com dot appdev. Instead of business, I will mention controller customer dashboard controller. Okay, I'll enter this with a REST controller because I want to accept the RESTful requests. I want this controller to be acting as a REST controller. So Once we have the REST controller, I have to map it to some URL, right? So /customer. I will be having one method public. We'll see what is the return type. We will have to modify it. Get customer dashboard response. Okay, this is the method. I have to get the method from path variable from the path param, right? So path variable will be the annotation. So integer its type and its variable name is integer ID, the path variable name. Okay. Now you have to annotate this with the request mapping of slash dashboard. I'll mention slash dashboard. Okay. So in the business, in this controller class, I have to call the business customer dashboard business. I have to call, right, and I have to auto-write it. So now what I'm going to do, this business class, I'm going to invoke the method that is there in the business. I'll have to return some response, right? So, okay, that's fine. So what I'm going to do is I have to return the response from this controller. So customer dashboard response. This is my return type. Okay. So initially I'll create a class for this and I'll mention only the customer profile response, but it should be giving all the details, right? Like profile, address, and payments. So we will modify accordingly whenever we implement the service invocations for that as well. So if I go here, instead of business controller slash dot response vivo in the package, I'm going to add customer dashboard response. Okay, customer dashboard response is my final consolidated response. Here in this, what I'm going to add for now, private customer profile response, only that. Okay, customer profile response. Okay, okay, I will see customer dashboard response, right? I'll let me put it as profile, the variable name. Okay, run source. We have to generate the getter and setters, right? So in my controller, I have to return it, right? So before returning the controller, what customer get customer details is giving me from business. From business, I'm getting the customer profile response, right? But business has to return the customer dashboard response to the controller because controller has to return customer dashboard response, which is a consolidated response, right? So what I'll do is from the service layer itself, where is my service layer? Yep, this one, right? Instead of customer profile response, I'll add customer dashboard response. Okay, customer dashboard response. What I'll do is once I get the response for the profile, I'll add it customer profile response called profile. Now, what I'll do is customer dashboard response also I have to auto-wire it. Okay, now I have to return this customer dashboard response from here, right? So set profile is there. Okay, to that set profile we have to pass this profile, and we have to return customer dashboard response. Okay, with that we are good with the service layer, and my business I have to modify because it has to accept the customer dashboard response now. Okay, so whatever that is returned from the service is actually making that one call to the other microservice and putting the response, the profile response, into the customer dashboard response. Business is accepting it. Similarly, my controller also has to accept it. Okay, customer dashboard response. So with this we have linked the asynchronous configuration microservice, this one, with the customer microservice. Okay, now let me modify the server URL, because server URL 8080 port, right, is being already utilized by the customer microservice. So I'll mention customer.port is equal to 65535 for this. Okay, now let me run this, whether it is able to make at least one of the call or not, we will see. Yep. See here, it is not finding a HTTP client class. So we forgot to add a dependency for HTTP components. What is where we have to add in pom.xml? We have to add the dependency. What is the dependency we have to add? I'll copy this. Apache dot Apache dot HTTP components. Okay, what is the name? HTTP client. What is the version we need? 4.5.2. Okay, now let me run this again. It should start now. Okay, now we are getting some error. Okay, what is the error? Auto wired customer dashboard service required a bean of type customer dashboard response. Okay, customer dashboard response, we have created it, but looks like we have not annotated with that component. Okay, okay, fine. Now let me run it again. See, the application is running fine now. Now what I'll do is I'll modify the port number, because I have to invoke the new service URL which was up just now, right? Customer slash dashboard. I have to pass the customer ID to this. Okay, there is a problem. Okay, we will see that. It is not finding the URL 404 error. Let me go here, customer slash dashboard. Yep, I have to mention customer ID here, right? Because that is what the URL is coming in. It is running. Yep. See, this is not the service directly response that is directly coming from your customer, but this is coming from your second project which we have created. Okay, this project customer dashboard is internally connecting to the customer service, and it is giving us a response. Now what we will do is we will go to service layer. Okay, service layer is making calls to client, right? Okay, let me go to client then. Okay, here what we will do is we will make the copy of this method 2 times, and we will modify it to respond with the address details and the payment details as well. Okay, customer address response we need. Similarly, the customer ID is same, right, for all these things. Okay, customer address response we have to accept from the service. Okay, again the URL also I have to modify it, right? What is the URL? Address.url. Where is the URL? This one. Address.url, and this is payments.url. This is payments URL, and this is address URL. Now the address URL I have to give it here because the customer ID will have to be substituted, right? So address URL will be given there. The builder will be created and the expanded. The URI param will be expanded, substituted. Now here customer address response. This is fine. We have to create the customer address response. Now let me go here and add customer payment details. Okay, instead of profile response, I have to modify it to accept payments response. Here payments response, and again here the payment response. Okay, now here I have to pass the payments URL. Okay, now only thing remaining for client class, we have to have the beans, customer address response and the customer profile payments response. As we already have them, I want to copy them here as well because I want to accept whatever it is being sent from the service. Okay, so I'm copying them here. Now I'll go there and change the package name. Here also change the package name. Yeah, customer address and the customer address and customer payments. These are the beans, right, which we have created here. Those also we have to copy it. So let me go there. In the entities, let me paste it. Okay, here we don't need any JPA related tags, right? We just need a component. And this will be in the app entities. Let me come here and remove this. Okay, so with that, okay, what is the problem in the customer payments still? Yeah, I have to modify the package. Now our entities are ready. Let me go to response and save this. What is the problem? Okay, no problem. Any problem here? Customer address I have to input. So that's it. Now our client is also ready. Okay, so my client is ready with all the methods. Now if I go to service, where is my service? Okay, let me close these beans. Yeah, this is the service, right? So in this service, what I have to do, I have to call those three methods as well, right? These three methods. What are the three methods? Get customer address details, get customer payment details, and this will be getting into address response, and this will be into payments response. I'll modify this to payments and I'll modify this to address. So along with setting the profile to dashboard response, I have to add address and payments as well. I have to use the specific method. Yeah, because I don't have the where is the customer dashboard response. I have to have the payments variable and the address variable here, right? Customer, what is that? Customer uh, address response, right? I'll give it as address private customer payments response. I'll give it as payments. Or else, what is the name we are getting when we invoke the service 8080 customer address? Okay, payments, customer payments. I'll give. Okay, customer payments. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the setter and getters for it, for these two variables as well, so that I can use them in my service layer. Where is my service? Yep, set customer payments, set customer address. Okay, okay, now yeah, my service is also ready now. Okay, I don't have to make any changes in the business because business is calling only this method and this service layer is calling all the three methods, right? And the client is actually making calls to other microservice. Okay, let me run it now. It is running fine. Now if I invoke 65535 customer slash dashboard slash one, profile is there, address is there, customer payments, what all payments are there, those also coming in. So it is a consolidated response now, right? So if you want, you can give this only one service to your client who is accessing the dashboard page. So it can get all the response. They don't have to call the three microservices one after the other. Okay, they can call one single microservice, and microservice will be calling the individual three microservices one after the other. Okay, that is what is happening now. Okay, if you look at this client code, okay, let me go here. Okay, this is my client code, right? Okay, let me show you here. This is exchange. Okay, let me add a logger. Okay, let me add a logger here. Log factory dot, what is that? Logger factory, logger factory dot get logger. What happened to this? Logger factory dot get logger. Let me remove this. Where is that? Okay, this is what it is. Okay, let me remove this log factory. I don't need that. logger factory. Which logger factory we have to use? SLF4J logger factory only we have to use. This logger slf4j.logger. Okay. Now I want to print something here. Okay. Before calling and after calling logger.info, get customer details started and get customer details ended. Similarly, in this method as well, before calling the microservice, get customer address details started. After getting the response, get customer details ended. Again, get customer payment details started. Okay, now let me run this service. It's running now. It is giving the response properly. Okay, if you see this, it is all the sequential process. Okay, one after the other. Okay, get customer details started and ended. The second service is not getting started till we get the response for the first service. Similarly, the third service is not getting started till we get the response from the second service. It is all the sequential process. So in a scenario where we are having where the services are independent of each other like this, right? The second service is not dependent on the response of the first, third service is not dependent on the response of the second, right? In such scenarios, we can get them started, all of the services started at a single point of time. Okay, let us wait for the response, whatever time it takes, let us wait for the response, but we don't have to wait for the service invocation itself. Okay, in the independent services scenario. So we in this scenario we can make the services to work as asynchronous. Where are we making the calls? Okay, here we are making the calls, the synchronous calls, right? So we have to annotate the methods at async. Okay, where you want a separate thread to be created for a particular task like this, right? The moment you annotate a method like this with at async, a separate thread will be created. They will not be running on the main thread. Okay, so how many methods you want to run as asynchronously are running in the background, then you have to annotate them with that async. Okay, so this is the first step to make asynchronous microservice call methods. Okay, let's see it now. Okay, see the service got the response, that is okay, but if you see here, they are still getting executed in the sequential manner itself, started ended, started ended, started ended. So asynchronous, and also if you see what is the thread, okay, they are also running on the same thread. Okay, the separate thread is not created for each of these method executions. So even though you mentioned the async tag, it is not getting async annotation on a method you want that to be running on a separate background thread. Even then, it is not getting triggered. So it has to be triggered by some other annotation. So if you want to trigger the asynchronous behavior, apart from annotating that method as async, you have to trigger that async behavior using enable async. Okay, where is your launcher class? Yeah, this one. Where is my app? This one, right? Yeah. So this is the our launcher class, right? So in order to apply the asynchronous behavior for your whole project, you can start trigger the asynchronous here. Okay. So the moment you annotate your application launcher with enable async and async annotation for your methods where you want those methods to be running on a separate thread, the threads will be created separately for each of the tasks you submit. Okay, now see this, we are getting incorrect response now. Okay, all of them are empty. Because if you see this, even though the tasks are created properly, task 2, task 3, task 1, task 2, see this separate threads are created. And if you see this one, uh, see this, uh, all the three tasks are submitted. They are not waiting for the response from one another task. Okay, so this is the asynchronous behavior. Okay, we will be waiting for the response at the end, but we are not waiting for the response to start the second task. Okay, if you see this, they are these tasks are running on a separate thread now. Okay, so this is the default asynchronous operation, and the task whatever you submit they will be given to the default task handler. Okay, default thread pool, that is a simple async thread pool task handler, something will be there. Okay, let me open it. Simple async, yeah, simple async task executor. Okay, this will be coming into picture and it will be creating the threads for your tasks which are mentioned with that async method. Okay, so whatever the default, right, whatever the methods you annotate with that async, they will be coming into the thread pool by this task executor. But if you want to do some customizations, right, like you want to configure the thread pool thread name here like this, instead of task 2, task 3, task 1, you want to mention your custom name, and you want to mention the number of threads to be created initially, number of what is the queue size, what is the maximum number of threads that you want to be created, right? All those things if you want to configure, you have to create your own thread pool task executor. Okay, instead of the simple async task executor, we have to create that. Okay, so if you want to configure your own asynchronous behavior, similarly if you want to configure your own rest template configure, we have used the configuration annotation on a class. Similarly, I'm going to create a new class where I will be defining my own custom configuration for async. Okay, so that class I will be annotating with that configuration. Along with that, I want the enable async also here itself instead of my launcher class. So I am going to remove it from there. Okay. Now if I go to async config, I am going to write a method that gives me the customized version of the asynchronous behavior. Okay. So that is the we have the executor to execute the threads parallelly. Okay, we have the executor class in concurrent package. Okay, and it has a method async executor. Okay, we are writing a method, not the executor is having, we are writing a method async executor. Okay, so this one we have to import it. So the async executor method, in this we are actually configuring a custom async executor. Okay, that is ThreadPool task executor. Okay, new ThreadPool task executor I have to use. What this will do is this will be whatever the tasks you are putting into this executor, right? There will be separate threads will be created based on the configuration. Okay, suppose executor dot set core pool size. Okay, this is one of the method which is used to set the initial threads to be started. Okay, let's say for example only one I'm mentioning. Okay, set max pool size. Okay, this is also I'm mentioning it as only one. Executor dot set queue capacity. Okay, this is also I'm mentioning it as only one. After that, if you want to specify the thread name, right, set thread name prefix. What is the thread name? Customer async I want. Okay, whatever the name, whatever the thread number that is going to be generated will be added. This is just a prefix to it. Okay, once all this configuration I have to initialize it. Okay, return executor. Okay. Now, as this configuration is done and I have annotated this class with that configuration, I have to annotate this method with that bean, because configuration will always look for the methods with that bean, right? So I can give my own name as well, my async executor. Okay, this is my configuration. Okay, the moment you have the configuration class in your container and it is having the enable async, okay, what it is going to do, it is going to search for the methods which are annotated with at async. In my service class I have the methods which are annotated with async, right? So it is going to create the asynchronous behavior, or it is going to create the pool for it. It is going to create a threads for it. Okay, separate threads for it. Okay, each and every thread for it. Okay, so the moment you put in a thread into the pool, right, it will be running in the background. Okay, we will see, we will get the detailed understanding of how we configured this core pool size and max pool size and queue capacity. We will see. Okay, what are the different values, how these impacts the asynchronous thread behavior. Okay, but let me go there to client. The moment you make a asynchronous call, right, it will wait, I mean it will not wait for the response to come. So the response will be coming in the future. So for that what we have to do is we have to, I'll comment that line, and I'll, we have to wait for the response coming in the future, right? There is a class available to get the response in future, that is completable future. Okay, completable future of customer profile response. Again, instead of response body, I have to return where is that? Uh, this is my completable future, right? Yeah, once the response is received, we have to, once the response is completed future, completable future dot completed future. To this we have to give the response dot get body, and I am going to return this. Okay, see, as we are getting the response in future, we have to accept the completable future type response instead of just a plain customer profile response. And once the future, once in future the response is received, we have to return that completable future dot completed future. Okay, instead of just a plain response dot get body. Similarly, for these methods as well, let me add the same completable future. Completable future. Similarly, again here, instead of just a plain response body, completable future dot completed future of response dot get body. Okay, now here as well, I have to get the completable future and return completable future dot completed future of response dot get body. Okay, so it is getting the completable future, right? It is returning the completable future, but my service is accepting just a plain customer dashboard response. Okay, what is this? This is my service, right? So I have to change the service as well to accept the completable future itself. Okay, so instead of all these three, what I'll do is I'll copy and comment. Instead of customer profile response, I'll mention it as completable future of customer profile response. Completable future of customer address response. Completable future of customer. So that's all. Okay, we are accepting it, but while clubbing it into a consolidated customer dashboard response, again we are having a problem here, right? So what we can do is profile dot, this is a completable feature type, right? Now if you want to get the actual customer profile response, you can give it profile dot get, then it will be assigned customer profile response to the dashboard response address dot get. Okay, this is also fine. Now again here is a problem. Okay, so to the profile dot get method, right? So instead of doing like this, we can also follow something else. Okay, we will see that unhandled exception type execution exception. Okay, so the problem here is I have to throw or catch the exception. Let me throw. Okay, I throws. So the moment I modify the signature in throw in service, I have to modify the signature here as well, in business as well. Let me modify in controller as well. Okay, now it's all fine now. Okay, we are accepting completable feature and we are getting the actual objects from the completable feature in the service and giving it to the dashboard response. Okay, now let me run it. The application is started. See, there is still a problem here. Okay, what is that problem? We'll see it. See, task completable future rejected from java.util because here is the problem here. See, we are submitting three tasks, right? We are submitting the three tasks, three methods to be running in the background thread. But what is the configuration we had given? If you see here, we are submitting three tasks to be running in the asynchronous fashion, but we mentioned core pool size as 1. So if you are mentioning core pool size as 1 and submitting three tasks, the other two tasks will be rejected. So the core pool size is actually mentions how many initial threads you want to be executed. So we have to mention like this. Okay, if you are running, if you want three methods to be running as a separate threads in the background, then you can mention three or more than three. Okay, but not less than three. The number of tasks you require. Okay, suppose if you are keep on giving the methods to be running in the asynchronous fashion even more than three, then they will be put in the queue. Okay, till it reaches the queue capacity. Here we mention 1, so we can mention 10 for example. Okay, so that until 10 requests they will be placed in the queue after the three threads are initial threads are created for your async methods. Remaining all will be placed in the queue. Okay, but once the queue is full, even then if you are giving the methods to be running in the asynchronous fashion, then the thread will be created till it reaches the max pool size. Okay, for your async methods. Okay, so that is the difference between the parameters we have to configure. Core pool size is the one which we have to configure for the initial threads to be created for your async methods. Queue capacity, once the core pool size is more than the given is more than, then the upcoming tasks will be put in the queue until the queue is full. Once the queue is full, the upcoming tasks, the thread will be created for these many upcoming tasks. Okay, so that is the configuration we have to do. Okay, it is running now, right? Okay, now let me on it. Now if you see, profile is there, address is there, customer payments is there, so we are getting the response properly. And if you see this, customer async 3 is there, async 2 is there, async 1 is there, whatever the configuration we had given it, right? So that is coming here. Okay, if you see this, async behavior is also being written even with our customer custom async behavior. If you want, what you can do is let me go there to client. Here we can even specify the async bean name, whatever the bean we have mentioned, right? Name, async bean name, right? Okay, we have to mention it in the double quotes. What is the config? Okay, my async executor. That way, if you want to have different async configurations for different methods, I mean, in a same project, if you are having different services, right? So three services, three tasks will be having some one async configuration, some other three tasks will be having some other async configuration. That way, you can differentiate it. Okay, as we are having only one async config, it is being injected directly, automatically. Okay, see, we are still getting it. Okay, they are running in the different threads as well, not on the main thread. Okay, if you see this thread asynchronous behavior is also being retained here. Okay, So that's all about async configuration. So enable async is a triggering point to enable the tasks in an asynchronous fashion. Just because you annotate a method with at async, it won't be running in the background thread. You have to trigger that async operation by using at enable async. Okay, so that is one thing. The other thing which I want to show, dashboard service, right? Here what it is going to do, okay, profile.get we have written, right? There is another version of the get so that we can wait for these many seconds or these many milliseconds to get the response from the future object. Okay, see this long timeout or the timeout. Okay, so we can mention I'll wait for only for 6000 milliseconds on time unit as milliseconds. Okay, like this also we can mention so that it won't be keep on waiting. Okay, here is a problem again. Okay, what is that problem? It is not handle the timeout exception. So I'll add the throws now. Yeah, I have to go to business now. I have to add throws. I have to go to controller now. Add throws. Now let me run this. Oh, this is running now, right? Now let me trigger the request again. We are getting all the details, right? So this is one single response that is making all the three calls asynchronously and giving us the consolidated response. Okay, this is all running in the async style. So that's all about okay async config. Let me iterate what is the significance of these three properties. Okay, so if the as and when we submit a tasks to the async executor, right? If the number of threads is less than the core pool size, okay, suppose threads running, suppose we have given three threads to be running, then core pool size is 5, then there will be then three more threads will be created. So if the number of threads is less than core pool size, create a new thread for each of the tasks that was submitted. If the number of threads is more than the core pool size, then add them to the queue. Okay, if the queue is full, even then if the threads are coming in but the number of threads is less than max pool size, okay, then create a new thread to run the tasks. It will be creating the new thread. If the queue is full but the threads that are acceptable still within the range of the max pool size, then they will be directly creating the thread. Okay, if the queue is full and the number of threads is greater than, then it is going to reject it. Okay, so that's what we have seen when we mentioned 111, right? We have submitted three tasks. The queue is created with one, max pool size is created with one, core pool size is created with one. So it is not going to accept the three tasks at a time. So the task rejection happens. So we always ensure that these parameters are configured properly. Okay, that's all about the synchronous configuration, guys. We have explained in detail about the usage of these annotations in detail with a detailed explanation. We also have seen the difference between the execution behavior of the synchronous and asynchronous calls, how the asynchronous calls are not waiting for the previous service call, that we have seen when we turned out our application from synchronous to asynchronous by using those two annotations. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you for watching. We will meet in the next video. Thank you.